It's ShortFatOtaku. I haven't talked to this guy in ages. He's so stupid. Last time we actually had a conversation, it was just so mind-numbing. The guy cannot think. I don't know how he has a following. It's so interesting, the kinds of people that can like get some views on this platform, because he's so stupid. What exactly does woke mean? Spoilers. It's Marxism. They're all talking about woke right now. Did they get like a newsletter? Gothics is making content on this. Fucking Chaya Raichik was doing it at a college the other day, talking about the definition of woke, and they all flail around. What exactly does woke mean? Cool. All right, let's do it.
The word woke has really caught on in the past few years.
Something about the way you mix your audio makes it so I can't... It feels muddy?
I've seen Melanie Mack and Stuttering Craig and Yellow Flash use it on side-scrollers all the time. I've seen my pals Sargon and Arch and V all use it.
Woke?
I've even started to see more center-left lib types begin to use it to make fun of absurd progressives. The way it's used by most people is to make a vague gesture towards hyper-progressive, quasi-socialist politics, and the fuzziness around the label has allowed for some strange baggage to be snuck in with the word. For example, I've seen people refer to Sweet Baby Inc. as woke, which fits, but I've also seen...
Sweet Baby Inc.? Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't on the... my pal Sargon. By the way, that's a super cringe Nazi LARP tabletop RPG that they do. Also, Melanie Mack is a fucking idiot. Oh my god, this looks boring. Anyway, they LARP as Nazis. Of course, fucking Rags. V is there. By the way, last time I talked to Sargon and V, I got V to come around on trans rights, and now it looks like, is V a fucking, like, anime girl now? What's going on here? He's fucking Nazi too, but like 3 years ago or something, I talked to V, and Sargon got mad at me and left, and I had a conversation with V at the end. You guys remember that? He roleplays as a lolly vampire. He's a weird pedo. Fuck, dude. Where are those rivers going? Well, this is how rivers work, don't you see? Was that with Jangles? Yeah, it was.
I've seen my pals Sargon and Arch and V all gesture towards hyper-progressive, quasi-socialist politics, and the fuzziness around the label has allowed for some strange baggage to be snuck in with the word. For example, I've seen people refer to Sweet Baby Inc. as woke, which fits, but I've also seen people declare that simply having a black person in a video game or a TV show is woke, which is frankly ridiculous.
Thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad you think that that's ridiculous. I don't know what a Sweet Baby Inc. is. They were talking about it prior, I don't know. Some kind of fucking game thing. I don't care. They're trying to do Gamergate too, but I don't give a fuck.
Seeing as there is something real being pointed at with the word woke, but also that people regularly miss the mark with it, I'm going to actually explain the concept behind the label. Yes, I know I did this video a year ago, where that one right-wing author, Bethany Mendel, went viral after Brianna Joy Gray asked her in an interview what woke meant, and she couldn't answer.
Probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke, and so, you know, when we talk about traditional...
What does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that,
yeah, Chaya did the same fucking thing. The same exact thing happened every time you ask these people. Like, they're all, he's going to say woke is Marxism. It's crazy because he considers himself a liberal, and I would say this is a more center take than some people for sure, but he like prides himself on being directly in the middle of any sort of conflict. He's so fucking lame. Like, if your political ideology is there must be a middle ground between two opinions, I just don't understand. And that's pretty much where he sits. Every time I talk to him, it's something stupid like that. It's like, no, man, there can be just like ethically correct and wrong things. There's certainly wiggle room within ethically correct. You know what I mean? I would rather... Can you imagine if we were talking about ways to pull off healthcare instead of just like, should we have it at all? Like, that isn't a reasonable debate. It is not reasonable, especially in the modern world, to be like, yeah, people shouldn't have access to healthcare. Insane. Riding the fence so hard the wood is tickling the prostate. That's not usually how it works anyway.
this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean,
you can't. Also, you say that when you say this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral while you're stammering like this, you insured it.
Woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it.
But frankly, I'm not
And you spent a chapter on it, and she didn't know what the fuck she was talking about.
satisfied with my work back then. So I'm going to take another crack at it. Let's start with what I actually...
Another crack. So this is your second What is Woke video? Incredible. All right. What is woke? You know what I think woke is? Just so we can get out in front of this and then we can talk about it. What I think woke is when ostensibly right-wing people get upset at, like, lefties, essentially, right? They get upset at lefties or anything that could be, like, obscured or construed as a lefty notion, right? Like the idea that black people and white people are equal, right? Or that ought to be equitable, right? And so, like, they freak out when you say, like, DEI is the new fucking buzzword. They're like, oh, DEI, it's woke and stuff. Non-white straight. There's some stuff they call woke, and it's just like liberal shit. I'm sounding woke right now? Fuck. What it used to mean is just like understanding systems and understanding our political reality for what it is. And you could call that leftism, but I don't think you need to be a leftist. Like there's lots of people who I would say that the right would consider woke that aren't like lefties. So it really is just a pejorative that they're trying. It's like, you know, they took an already blurry definition, somehow made it worse. It's just because like the language of, you know, the English language in general is already pretty ephemeral and can have a lot of double entendre and, you know, pronunciation meanings and context. Like fuck can be used innumerably in all sorts of different situations, and it doesn't always mean a bad thing, or sometimes it's like a really dirty sexual thing. Oftentimes it's not, though. Usually it's just like a to exclaim, right? This is the same thing as trying to describe that part of speech where it's just ubiquitous because they caused it to be ubiquitous. They caused it to be multi-purpose because they wanted to try to drive this right-wing narrative. And so discussing woke without discussing like the intent behind the right wing to try to paint things as something, usually it's like really, really weak sauce McCarthyism style brain, right? Where it's like, oh, it's woke.
Actually did do correctly though. Last year, some dumb online lefty pulled the same card on me.
Wokeism is the ethics and... I think I disagree with you on this. Wokeism is the ethics and processes of socials. Yeah, this is why I disagree. You do not have to be a socialist. That is an economic opinion. Wokeism is the ethics and processes of socialism expanded beyond class struggle to include race struggle. Okay, so intersectionalism is woke. Gender struggle, sexual struggle, and any other near infinite number of marginalized group is defined by intersectionality. So intersection... So is the concept of intersectionality altogether woke? Like, is that woke? Is that what wokeness is? Or is it just under the umbrella of wokeness? Because you're describing intersectionality here, but I think you would consider intersectionality a part of wokeness. Socialism, you would probably consider a wokeness. I don't know why. It's an economic opinion. You don't have to be a Marxist to be a useful idiot. Do you mean that if you're woke, you're a useful idiot? The big Nick?
Asking me what wokeism is. I replied with this. Wokeism is the ethics and processes of socialism, expanded beyond class struggle to include race struggle, gender struggle, sexual struggle, and any other near infinite number of marginalized groups, as defined by intersectionality. This ended up being a good enough definition that I've seen it repeated a few times online, even by random people I don't know or who don't follow me. So hey, if this is going to end up being my main contribution to the wider conversation, that's fine by me.
Okay.
But let's go a bit deeper into this description and really figure out what makes it work. When I'm saying socialism here, let's start with the basic definition.
All right.
Socialism is an economic and political philosophy encompassing...
Did you use Wikipedia's? Okay, whatever. Don't care. Fine.
Diverse economic and social systems characterized by social ownership of the means of production, as opposed to private ownership. It describes the
So as opposed to private ownership, and then he assumes that means that no one has, like, their own stuff, and then they lose their minds. As soon as you say as opposed to private ownership, he's like, well, I don't own my stuff. I can't have a house. I can't have clothes and shoes. I got to share my shoes. They always say dumb shit like that. I hate that the term private ownership has to the modern person my privacy and my private ownership. Probably because of the term private gun owner. Can't wipe my own ass? You cannot. No. Your neighbor has to wipe your ass in the commune. No individualism whatsoever. Human centipede. It's real communism. This is our meal. We are taking a shit.
Economic, political, and social theories and movements associated with the implementation of such systems. I'm going to go on a long commie diatribe here, so I want you to know right now, I personally don't support this stuff. I am describing to you the ideas of the communists.
He's got a virtue signal to his fans. I don't want you to think I'm a wokey. Cool, dude.
I don't need to add more fuel to the Dev as a communist fire here.
Dev is a communist? I would love to talk to you about economic systems, Dev.
For Karl Marx, class is specifically defined by its relationship to the means of production, aka the tools used to create products. Marx identified two main classes. First, the proletariat. These people work the means of production but don't own them. They sell their labor to the owner in exchange for a wage, and the amount of leftover money after the cost of tools and materials and labor are subtracted from the sale price of the product is called surplus value. Marx believed the owner stole the surplus value from the proletariat.
Correct. Yeah, but also just like the idea of singular ownership in general is, it's precarious for the owner in an economic system where financial ruin could lead to your actual death and harm, and the harm and death of your family. But also, like, it's just unethical. These people literally worked for the surplus value and saw zero of it because of the risk of ownership. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so you build in risk of ownership into ownership, and suddenly you can justify robbing people. It's nuts. I don't know why you, as a human being, don't want just the value that you create for your company to be paid to you, right? I have no idea the cucked nature of your brain if you're like, no, I don't want more money than I'm making. What? A what?
Secondly, the bourgeois. These people own the means of production but don't work them. They contribute no labor to the production process.
That's true.
They make their money simply by extracting rents from it.
That's true as well.
This is the surplus value.
I mean, these aren't just the two classes. There's petite bourgeoisie. There's you can break it down. It's fine.
Talking about manufacturing a physical good, but it can also.
I'm also not a Marxist, like, in that I don't give a shit what Karl Marx said. I agree with him about this. I don't care though. Like, I have no reverence whatsoever for someone like Karl Marx. I respect it. I agree with a lot of it, but I'm not like, I don't give a shit. I don't care about theory. I don't care about anything that any of these guys did or said in their whole lives. Genuinely. I care about material reality for us right now, and I just so happen to agree with a lot of this shit. But to say that I was a Marxist would be nuts. I don't identify with like a system like that.
Literally mean rent if the person in question is a landlord whose product is housing. Marx identified two
product is housing.
Other classes which aren't important to the topic. The lumpen proletariat and the petty bourgeois. These two are their own topic for another time. But for our purposes today, it's the proletariat and the bourgeois. Those who work but don't own. And
got a chud and chat? Which one? The big Nick is Jake Trans. I'm not. Do you want to talk about that? You're interrupting my video.
Those who own but don't work. These two groups have inherently opposing interests due to their differing relationship to the means of production. Mm-hmm. The bourgeois is always incentivized to extract as much surplus value from the proletariat as he can.
Yeah, how do you not agree with that? That's like basic capitalism, 100%. The number one driver for like a business owner is profit and to limit the amount of money they have to spend. Like, have you never been into a business? Like, they want to limit labor costs, which is human people making money, and they want to, maximize profit. This is just normal stuff.
The proletariat is always incentivized to resist this process. This is a zero-sum game, whereas one class achieves what it wants, the other must necessarily lose just as much.
I feel like I've tried to ask Big Nick to talk to me before, and you didn't?
Marxists believe that these inherently opposing interests cannot be aligned or coordinated. It doesn't matter if an individual bourgeois member is a good person, or if he is willing to give back some of the surplus value in order to placate his workers.
To plate some of it. This is what I'm talking about. So you just use the word placation, and you're like, yeah, that's an ethical act to placate them. It's not. It's not ethical for the business to work this way. They literally sit there while other people toil simply because they have a lot of money. It's not right. It shouldn't be. It's crazy, man. This is just kings again. We came over here to get away from that shit, and literally billionaires are kings. It just doesn't look like that because they don't have like official fiefs.
Existence requires at least some exploitation, and the only way to not exploit is to not be bourgeois and provide labor to the enterprise. Any negotiation between these two classes is necessarily always temporary, as over time their class interests will reassert themselves.
Yeah, pretty much. So the only way that that'll work is if you have a class traitor, and typically those are lower class people being traitors towards the upper class. Very rarely do you have an upper class person side with the people. And usually it's because that person inherited their wealth or something, got it from some other way. Parents of billionaires sometimes are okay. Or children of billionaires. But not often. They're often all shit. Because the system has benefited them personally and they can't see beyond that. And so they think, of course this is an ethical situation. I am a billionaire. It was easy. Anyone can do it. Because of course it is. Of course it's easy for billionaires. Anyway, yeah. So this is a great political cartoon. Agree.
The space gained by the negotiation will have been spent. Therefore, class conflict is inevitable.
It is inevitable. We're currently having a class conflict, Dev. Don't you agree? I don't think that it has to be violent, though. I do think that you can do it without violence.
Capitalism advances, the bourgeois becomes richer.
Or at least without civil war or whatever. This kind of violence. The kind of revolution that Karl Marx and stuff was saying was necessary. And that's because, Karl Marx lived in the fucking 1800s, man. It's not it's not a viable, you probably did have to do a revolution back then. We've had class conflict since class, yeah.
Proletariat becomes...
We aren't getting out of capitalism without violence. Without some violence. I don't think we need to overthrow violently. I mean, okay, so this is why I talk about decommodification of survival needs, because it's pretty easy to run on policies like free rent, in my opinion. I think that'd be highly popular for the people. And I think if you ran on free rent and you could follow through with it, you would have a very high rate of approval, and which would give you essentially, or something similar to that, healthcare, education. Any one of these is a domino, and they fucking know it, right? Because if your survival stops hinging, rent is the huge one, right? Because living is obviously super expensive, and so that's so big. That's probably bigger than healthcare is housing. But any of these is one domino in the right direction, and what happens is, If you in your lifetime want to be out of capitalism, 100% violent revolution is the only way to do it. If you just want capitalism to end someday and for us to have higher qualities of life, we do not need violent revolution. Violent revolution leads to lower qualities of life for everyone for a long period of time, and we still don't see it in our lifetimes. But it may be worth it at some point to do that if the proletariat, as it were, becomes uncomfortable enough to need to do something like that, right? However, that's not how we live right now. Right now, we live on this sort of border that is deeply stressful to the people that have to live there, right? Rent's due, and you just barely get by every month for years and years and years and years and years and years, and it's so stressful, right? But because we are in that limbo state, and that's sort of part of the design of the system, it's really hard to get people to mobilize because they need to make their second job. They need to, provide. They need to run across town and grab their kids so they can afford it. They need to, go to night classes. They need to do all this shit. That's just life. So it's part of the design. That said, once you start decommodifying things that need to be out of markets, I think the capitalists agree, because of the way they talk about communism and the effects of it and stuff. If you just give it to one country, it's going to start to, domino effect of everything else. And I think society would be the same way because, it's pretty hard to deny the material benefit of having free housing. You know what I'm saying? Like a society that has, rental properties don't charge rent and you can just work until you find a more stable living situation. You can move to any city, have available housing. You can move to any town, have available housing, and then you can work and save up, go to school, do whatever for, a piece of property somewhere you want to live. Or, maybe you just always want to live this way. Or maybe you just want to fucking travel. Who knows? Yeah. I think capitalists will lash out violently when it starts to wither. I agree, Des DeNovas. I think violence in general is inevitable in human society, and especially in a capitalist one. I just don't think violence is necessary to bring about socialism. Like, does that make sense? I think it's inevitable, but we could do it quite peacefully. Yeah, I mean, there'll be like robot fucking murder dogs in our lifetimes.
More desperate, and the tipping point of revolution will always be reached. Marx's historical materialism is his theory of history, his attempt to explain why human history unfolded the way that it did. His conclusion was that it was this class conflict that was the primary driver of history.
I mean, it really is in a lot of ways. It's not always specifically capitalism, but like, kings hoarding wealth, religious leaders hoarding wealth, businessmen hoarding wealth. It's been the same for a long time. The French Revolution happened. Fucking, Marie Antoinette happened. We've seen these things fall apart. Roman Empire, Persian. It just keeps happening due to inequality. Yeah. And people not having what they need to live and be happy will cause them to lash out against the people that do have more than they need to be happy and okay.
All of the various wars and revolutions and the creation of new states and
things that are violent that support the current system are never called violent. True.
New philosophies, and all other human action, they all had their source in the growing economic divide between those who work and those who own, and the inevitable class conflict this divide creates. Marx was obviously wrong about this. History is littered with the examples of people, of classes, of whole countries or kingdoms doing things for non-economic reasons.
Name one. You say economic, but like you're going to say like wars for expansion are definitely territory. The Crusades were not, they were religiously fueled, but they were for profit and territory and like trade routes. I'm sure there's been some personal beefs. Hatfield's McCoy's situation, but that was also because of materials as well sometimes. So colonialism is extremely capitalistic, of course. Right. I can't think of a conflict that doesn't have some kind of motivator for, profit. Like for the winning side to gain something. Like the attacker is trying to gain something almost always. And it would be about economics. Like if the French Revolution was about economics, right? Is it possible to do capitalism while also equitably distributing wealth? It wouldn't be called capitalism, it would be called socialism, right? So to do it equitably, you wouldn't be able to pay gate survival necessities, right? Because if you pay gate survival necessities, it's inherently unequitable. The only way to make it equitable would be to like flood the streets with money, and then like that destabilizes economy because the numbers stop working because it's just math. Like the value of it will be driven down if everyone has everything. Like the bottleneck of money, like, trickling down to us only a little bit is by design. You have no incentive to work for a capitalist if all your needs are met for your whole life. You'll just stop working for them, right? Like if you ask most people what they want to do with their life, even capitalists, if you don't bring it up as like a political thing, you're just like, hey man, what do you want to do? Like if you could just do anything, what would you do? They're always going to say, I'd quit my job, no matter what it is, almost always, unless you have just the dopest job. But they'd say I'd work less, I'd spend more time with my family and friends, I'd do stuff I want to do, and I'd travel and shit. I'd go eat, and I'd go fucking hang out and play. And of course, right? That's what everyone wants to do. We just want to experience the world. Did you guys know that this world costs us nothing to live on? Not a thing. It was free. We just... all we had to do was go through billions of years of evolution and end up here. So you can't really have an ethical system under capitalism, but you could have a more ethical capitalism. It's kind of like syndicalism, sort of, I suppose. Essentially, the way to do any sort of ethical capitalism would to be take care of survival necessities, to decommodify them. So housing, rent specifically. Rent is not a thing that you pay for out of pocket, and should have stewards instead of fucking landlords, and it shouldn't be a for-profit thing. It should just be a humanitarian. It should be an amenity, something that you have at your lowest rung in society. You have shelter, right? And not dog shit shelter, real, like an apartment with running water and a place to bathe and a place to keep your stuff and a key on the door and shit like that. You should be able to have education so that if you're in that situation or just on the come up on it, just in your life, you always have the opportunity to get educated in any way that you would like to try to better yourself and help your community and yourself and your family just to learn skills that you might need. You should always have access to healthcare, because if we're not healthy, the community is going to suffer. And if the community suffers, the whole nation suffers. And if we even have a state at all, then what is the point of society if not for the increased probability of well-being, right? And to increase probability of well-being, which is, we're entirely secular here, it seems obvious that we should give people the things they need. Also, produce and stuff like that, like unprocessed foods and stuff, should be free at the point of sale for just any of us, just any person that wants to go to the store and grab like some tomatoes and onions and potatoes and stuff. That shouldn't cost you any money, right? Everyone should have access to whole foods at their local markets, and if you can't get them there, in food deserts, we can amend that for whatever we can get to whatever place. But like Alaska might have some fucking problems with that specific thing in the winter, but they should have access to a broader access to food then. I would undo most of it, but I understand, I'm fine with you buying, I say this a lot, buying a bag of Doritos or Taco Bell or a PlayStation. We don't need any of those things. Those are fun things that we like, and it's fine if you want to pursue some kind of job in the community to get money to be able to do that. I think markets for things that are not necessary, I don't have an ethical issue with that. If you have a way for people to earn it, I guess it doesn't really bother me. But pay gating necessities is the problem. So that's a long answer to an important question. Can capitalism be ethical? Kind of not really. It's sort of socialism with markets. We need to do more ugly produce things. Just in general, just any produce shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to only get the dog shit. But I agree. Like, ugly produce is often just tossed out or something and should be given away, at the very least.
But nonetheless, the Marxist analytical lens is the lens of class conflict. And the people who take that lens up, whether they are nominally left-wing or right-wing, doesn't matter. They are some flavor of socialist, even if they disagree with Marx in all respects. So, when I said wokeism is the ethics and processes of socialism, here's what I was referring to.
I don't think you have to be a socialist at all to be woke. You can be a capitalist and understand intersectional feminism, and lots are.
The process.
I hope you have a cone.
You're wrong. This is just one of the many things you consider woke is socialism. K-Mutant Squirrel giving one to Rakujaku, but as a big wokey. No, I think woke stuff is about social things. I'm very happy if you're. Typically, what happens though is wokies will often be socialists because they're woke. You feel me? Like the mechanism of wokeness is essentially skepticism towards systems and understanding them. It's not different from decoding God or whatever, and not being a religious person. Is just to have a healthy skepticism of things and to try to understand it. And what happens when you dig into systems, it's like, oh, well, how does racism come about? Oh, that's fucked up. And there's still vestiges of it in our society, even if we're not actively thinking about being racist all the time.
Processes of socialism? That's the belief that
Can we force ANCAPs to still have to pay for necessities in our social society? No, even they get stuff.
Class conflict drives everything. The proletariat and the bourgeois have an inherently different relationship to the means of production. This difference creates opposing class interests, and these interests are irreconcilable, meaning that class war is inevitable.
So class war is not like violent war necessarily, but Marx was a little more violent than I am. Violent-minded, that is. It's definitely going to be contentious because of the nature of hoarding wealth that is used for survival, right? And because people's literal survival and quality of life is affected materially by the hoarding of wealth by fucking, robber barons, man, landlords and shit, of course there's going to be tension.
Negotiation can't solve the problem. It only serves to forestall it. And a smart person would use the temporary peace only as space to prepare for the next war. The ethics of socialism? That's referring to the moral superiority of the proletariat. The bourgeois are the exploiter class. They are the ones extracting the surplus value from the proletariat. They also wield disproportionate power over the proletariat. A worker must sell his wage to a boss in order to survive. Liberalism may have granted him the freedom to choose which boss, but he must nonetheless sell his labor or starve.
That's true. Yeah. I don't think that you need to sell your labor to starve. And usually a capitalist like Dev will immediately say, well, yeah, what do you mean? Why? Why, bro? Well, not everyone can work. That's definitely number one on the list. Not everybody wants to work, and I think that's important. Like, life isn't just filled with stuff you don't want to do. I think we should, really consider not wanting to do stuff is fine. And then understanding that some stuff we have to do, even if we don't want to do it, is fine as well, right? Those people who don't want to do stuff, that don't want to work, might still work sometimes. That is life sometimes. You're still going to have to do stuff. Totally get it. But here's the situation, right? When you live in a system that your needs are met and you have the only way to go is up, right? The farthest you can fall is a well-furnished or, well taken care of apartment, and you have the ability to go better yourself, and you always have food, and you can literally have a family and never work a day in your life. But they're not gonna, right? Like, they're gonna want to be part of their community. They're gonna want to go out and do stuff and better themselves. Like, no one likes to just sit inside and do nothing unless they're under capitalism and have been so beaten down by it. That's the only thing they crave anymore, right? Very few people want to rot forever in their house. We that happened during COVID, right? During the lockdowns, during COVID, still in COVID. Like, in the lockdowns, a lot of people found out, man, when I don't have anything to do, it kind of sucks. And that's true, but here's the difference, right? They also found out the duality of this, which is, if I'm not fulfilled by the thing I am doing for work, I also don't want to do that, because there's lots of things that I'm happy about now that I wasn't happy about before the lockdowns. Like, it woke a lot of people up. You can call it woke, but it's not. I mean, I think a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, awoke to the idea of, like, wait, I don't have to fucking work for my boss. My boss doesn't own my ass. There are things I can do to make myself happy and my family enriched that might not include going to an office and making telemarketing calls. Like, does that provide a service for the world? Is that a good thing? That we have 45 different kinds of corn chips because they subsidize the shit out of corn, and so it's cheap to make corn chip snacks? Is that good? Can't we just have Fritos and some other guys? Why do we need 45 of them? Because guys are trying to make a buck, and then, those will cycle through and they don't really work. It's just so silly, man. We could have a more efficient, happier society with higher health, housing, education. I am cheap. I'm only like $5 or $6. That's true. You purchased me for a whole month.
The boss.
Subscribe immediately, chat.
If any one worker decides not to work for him, it's no big deal. There's always another worker that he can hire. Therefore, any negotiation between the proletariat and the bourgeois has an inherent power imbalance in favor of the bourgeois, making the negotiation itself coercive and exploitative.
That's true. I want to read this, though. I didn't read your last one, so I'm going to read this one. Is it still immoral if the employees voluntarily agreed to these terms and everything happened as advertised? If someone consensually agrees to work for someone for $700 per month, what is the harm in this? So I'm not reading this yet, but I suspect it'll be like, well, you can't really consent to work under capitalism because my survival demands that I say yes eventually. And this might be my best offer right now. If the employees voluntarily... Did the employees come to the table with the same amount of money as the capitalists and receive an offer to be able to invest that money for a share in ownership, which they turned down in favor of a flat wage? Because if not, well, and they're not sharing in the profits, of course. Because if not, the agreement is not fully consensual. You cannot give consent from an unequal position. Period. Yeah. Okay. So we were here. Yeah. So if you don't have a stake in this as well. Like, co-ops exist and are ethical and work. This can be good. I mean, they're not even like 100% co-ops either. They still have like, management, and they still have CEOs and stuff. Work or die is not consent. Exactly. It's a deep power imbalance. And eventually you're going to have to say yes to a job that you don't want. There's so many examples of this.
It's for this reason that socialist morality isn't concerned with rules or deeds. It's concerned with outcomes, and only outcomes in favor of the proletariat.
Outcomes? Deeds? What deeds? Aren't deeds outcomes? Like, isn't that just the process of causing an outcome? An outcome? Outcome. I'm starting to lose the meaning, and it's just becoming outcome. Outcome? Like, secularly speaking, the only thing that matters is your material well-being improves. Right? So, I guess it's outcome-based, but it's not like why the ethic exists.
Anything is permitted as long as the proletariat serve to benefit, because...
No, that is not... Anything is permitted if the proletariat benefits is not... It's definitely not the claim. That's crazy. That is so stupid. How can you misread that so well?
They are the oppressed underclass. This is why you might see a leftoid online analyze a situation by
leftoid
asking who's being exploited or who has the power when talking about morality. Because contrary to the liberal idea of a universal moral principle, for the socialist, the exact same action can be good or evil depending on the class of the target.
No, it's more like the relationship and hierarchy between the people that you're talking about. This doesn't make sense. Do you only in like terms of like labor discussion, I guess? And even then, I don't know. This doesn't really sound accurate. Like I'm thinking of like a million caveats in my head to what you just said that don't apply. So yeah, I guess it's just wrong.
Put simply, this is the doing bad things to bad people is good argument.
No, it's not. A member of the fucking bourgeoisie being like sexually assaulted by the proletariat is not good, for instance. Right? Like just some extreme version. Like that's not just suddenly good because there's a class difference. You feel me? Like, how can you think this way? Dummy.
So, if wokeism is the ethics and processes of socialism, that means that wokeism is the idea of two classes with irreconcilable differences, where one class is morally superior to and exploited by the other, and that this state of affairs inevitably leads to class warfare.
So, yeah, I mean, I have lots of problems with that first half of your definition. I'm not surprised.
The second part of my definition reads, expanded beyond class struggle to include race struggle, gender struggle, sexual struggle, and any other near infinite number of marginalized groups, as defined by intersectionality. Let's pull up intersectionality's definition too.
Sure.
Intersectionality is a sociological analytical framework for understanding how groups and individuals' social and political identities result in unique combinations of discrimination and privilege.
Yeah.
Examples of these factors include gender, caste, sex, race, ethnicity, class, sexuality, religion, disability, height, age, weight. These intersecting and overlapping social identities may be both empowering and oppressing. Oh man, I like how Wikipedia here admits that there's no good data on how useful this concept is.
The intersecting and overlapping social identities may be both empowering and oppressing. Yeah, okay, so, wow. So that's just talking about, like, being a white guy who, is tall but is gay. You know what I mean? Like, so you can have the overlapping social identities being both empowering and oppressing. Like, it's crazy you can't read this. You know what I mean? Like, so a tall white gay guy is ostensibly oppressed by a right-wing government, but is also empowered by it, as long as, like, Dave Rubin is a great example of this. So he passes as a straight guy on purpose. Like, that's his like bag, right? Is like, oh, look, I'm one of the good gays. I'm basically a straight guy that is gay, and he is also actually oppressed. I mean, he had to move to California to get married, right? And could lose his marriage rights to his husband, which he will advocate for, of course, because he's a dumbass. A pick-me then? Yeah, I mean, yeah, sometimes that's the case, for sure. They get pick-me actions. Women who advocate for patriarchy, for example. Pearl is a great example of that.
That's just great. Back in my video on Antonio...
So this is what I mean. Like if Dev sat and talked to me about this topic, like would he just never agree with me right here? That's so easy to talk. Like, do you not understand, like, the Venn diagram of a human? Can you imagine a Venn diagram in your head of the different things that are going on? They say intersecting and overlapping social identities.
Good data on how useful this concept is. That's just great. Back in my video on Antonio Gramsci and his ideological descendants, I mentioned that intersectionality as a concept was invented in 1989 by Kimberly Crenshaw, a black activist. Back in university...
Why is it... Okay. So the term, sure, but intersectionality has always kind of existed.
When I took gender studies, the metaphor used by the professor to describe intersectionality was the bars of a cage or bars of a jail model, where each vector of oppression constituted one bar. If you're white, male, financially privileged, attractive, intelligent, able-bodied, but you're gay, you might experience some oppression for being gay. But that only constitutes one bar. And a jail cell with one bar can't really hold anyone back. But if you're oppressed among multiple dimensions, then there's multiple bars, and now the jail cell begins to form.
So this is like a neat metaphor to try to like explain it to somebody who hasn't heard it before. They sometimes will use like hurdles in a relay race as well. But I think just talking in terms of like actual oppression, because these guys freak out. They're like, what do you think? You're in jail, and that's why you do oppression Olympics. That's why you try, so you can say that you're a victim. And it's like, ugh, just so stupid. It's not why. The reason that people bring this stuff up, and you're saying classes, it's to understand it. It's to make sense of the phenomenon of all of these things, right? These are socially enforced situations that we can change. These are things that we put on ourselves as a human species that don't have any place in society. They're not useful. They're only harmful. It just doesn't make any logical sense to keep them. I don't know. Maybe I'm just fucking too smart for this. There's no logical reason to keep racism, sexism, heteronormativity, maybe?
In the early 2010s, the short-lived term, the Kyriarchy, was coined to try and push online feminism away from simply focusing on the patriarchy, using the intersectional model, though the idea didn't really catch on. But if you observe the intersectional model, what you'll notice about these vectors of oppression and privilege is that individually, they each form opposing class dichotomies, male and
Trying to read some of these: slim, average, large, body size. Some of this stuff is like fizzly though. Like it's not really tied to power sometimes, but yeah, at the same time it is. I don't think they all share the same slice of the pie. I think rich is like half the pie. Like wealth is a huge one in our fucking, like citizenship doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter. I mean, it matters still. Language won't matter, skin color matters, but it won't matter as much if you're a billionaire. But the way that they will treat you will matter still, like in those spaces and stuff. Your education might not matter if you're rich, or your fucking ability. Your sexuality is usually going to be kept to yourself for political reasons. You know, rich takes up a lot of this, which is why the biggest struggle is class. It's too equally divided, yeah, for sure.
female, white and non-white, straight and gay, cis and trans, able and disabled. Any intersectional identity can be conceptualized in this way. When I said that the ethics and processes of socialism were expanded beyond class struggle to include marginalized groups as defined by intersectionality, what I was specifically referring to was applying the Marxian lens of class conflict to these
Marxian
groups as well, not just the proletariat and bourgeois. Let's run through the logic. Let's do it with America's #1 identitarian conflict, white versus black. If we were to take the Marxian lens and then plug white into the place of the bourgeois and black into the place of the proletariat, what does the ethics and processes of socialism look like now? Well,
so if you change what Marxism even is, and it becomes just race math, this is incomprehensible. This doesn't make sense. This is like saying, what if we stopped? I don't even know. It's so apples to oranges. What if we took the roller coaster cars off the roller coaster and we just rollerbladed down? Wow, that sounds more dangerous. I don't know. This is different. It's a different thing. Now you're rollerblading down like wooden hills. It's not a roller coaster at all. That's just dangerous. Race is something you are born with, while wealth is flexible. These cannot be the same. I mean, yeah, it's like it doesn't make sense. There's steel manning, the list of evil words and concepts, which I assume you mean. I guess I don't know what you mean here. Well, you should steel man the position though, and not just like do whatever this is and just change the parameters of the whole thing.
Well, like the two social classes, the two races must have inherently different and opposing interests. But
okay, but that no. Nope. They don't actually. Yeah, so like changing just what the fuck we're talking about doesn't really make sense at all. Class, the battle between class, like black people and white people's conflict does come from a class struggle mostly, and then the social phenomenon of racism came out of that due to the enforcement of class, lower class, onto the black population by the chattel slaving white barbarians that fucking took these people. Like, so it is innately a class struggle when you force people into servitude. But then now you have this like social phenomenon on top of it to like justify it and add fire to it. I don't know. This is not a 1-to-1 rate thing. This is stupid as fuck. You see what I mean? Why he's so dumb? He just does dumb shit. He doesn't think right.
instead of class interests, they're now race interests.
His centrism is forcing binary is something like that. Like he just cannot. He's like, well, what if we took that logic, okay, and then undid all of that, and then put two different words there and concepts all together. It's cool, man.
These race interests are inherently irreconcilable, meaning a
He makes me
racial
feel
war
so
is
smart.
the only outcome. The whites are the exploiter race. They only extract from blacks. They wield disproportionate power over blacks as well. And any negotiation between the two
I hate that he keeps saying blacks.
races has an inherent power imbalance in favor of whites, making
Yeah, man, this isn't.
the act of negotiation coercive and exploitative.
Yeah, man, you're fucking weird. This is not right. This isn't a concept. He got this from conservatives like Peterson. Cultural Marxism? Oh. Yeah, what is this, man? No one thinks like this. Is Dev gonna fucking talk to me about this? This is so stupid. I've talked to him before. He's not bright. What negotiations? Yeah, what negotiations?
Their moral calculations aren't concerned with rules or deeds, only outcomes in favor of the black race, because their
What?
exploitation means anything is permitted as long as they serve to benefit.
That is actually just not how that works. You tried to plug in white and black in place of proletariat and bourgeoisie? What the fuck? So there's lots of overlap between bourgeoisie and white people in America, and a lot of overlap between proletariat and black people in America, and that's due to the mechanism of slavery, which is a class struggle. Racism is a byproduct of this class struggle. I feel so smart right now. Seriously, I'm saying such big words at this guy. Think he can keep up? Holy shit.
That is
He's making me feel so logical. It's very easy to think of this stuff, I think.
what the ethics and processes of socialism looks like, applied not to Marx's class conflict, but America's race
No
conflict.
wonder he doesn't like leftism. He has no clue what the fuck he's talking about. Of course.
And now that I've laid it out to you,
He's
it
doing the definition of straw manning. I know, right?
probably feels like you've just peered inside the brain of a BLM activist who spends all their time screaming about how evil the white man is.
No.
What I've described here is the black activist ideological programming.
You have not described that. This is a straw man of the position. This is so wholly incorrect. You were fine for like 4 minutes just reading definitions. You were just reading definitions. You tried to synthesize the information and it fell off a fucking cliff, dude. Once you had to start to use your noggin, just over for you. Classic SFO experience. Holy fucking shit, liberals. Or centrists, where the fuck this guy is. So dumb. Not a liberal. He's not a Black Lives Matter supporter. Liberals support Black Lives Matter kind of for dumb reasons too. It's usually a virtue signal, but at least they're on the right. In the correct, rather, not the right. That's where SFO lives. He calls himself a liberal, though, doesn't he?
Preset list of instructions that automatically
like Sargon
runs in their brains when they think about matters of race.
Mask on right winger, classic.
By the way, if you take a look inside the head of a white supremacist, you'll see the exact same logic, just with the white and black variables switched. A lot of the
Okay, all right. So the reason that I don't think it would work 1-to-1, but your vernacular that you used in your straw man would work better with a white supremacist, because being a Black Lives Matter advocate is not being a black supremacist, right? A white supremacist does, in fact, care a lot about benefiting white people, but look at this shit. Like, this guy, not Kid Rock, middle-aged Rock right there. Like, they're LARPing. Stop killing our police officers. Staying proud, White Lives Matter with fucking eagles. This is Nazi shit, dog. White Lives Matter. Yeah. So this is different. They're supremacists. But it only has, like, you know, sort of like the verbiage is similar to what your straw man was, but it's really not 1-to-1. There's no negotiation, for instance. They're not negotiating. It's crazy, too, because, like, they want all black people to be gone, but also they would love slavery to be back.
A lot of the intellectual writing of the modern white identitarian movement inherits its logic from the Nazis' own political philosophy. You know that IQ bell curve meme? The low IQ position is saying that Nazism is socialism because it's in the name. The middle IQ position is coping about fascism being capitalism and decay, and Nazis literally coining the term privatization. None of that is real, by the way, but that's a future video. The high IQ position is understanding that National Socialism was named because it was socialism for one nation only, and because it used...
No. It wasn't socialism for one nation only. It was... To even call it socialism for one race only is not true. They used National Socialism as a way to gain popularity for the idea, and the closest thing to socialism you could give it is that, like, they gave, like, Nazi officials, like, housing and shit, I guess, and their families got stuff, and then they stole the wealth from Jewish people and redistributed their robbery. Like, they literally robbed Jewish families and other minority families, anyone that they exterminated, and they redistributed the wealth. That's the closest thing that you could call. But that's only, like, the phrase redistributes wealth is not the same, right? This is not even close to socialism. The Aryan people didn't even have socialism in this system. Nazis were 100% capitalist. Right, they had markets and everything. It was not socialism. They had access to health care, but not if they were, like, if you had any sort of thing that fucked you up. Like, I have fucked up ankles when I was a baby. Nope, to the fucking wood chipper with you, boy. I'd be gone. You can't have, like, developmental problems. You can't have, you know, any sort of shit going on. It's not socialism. It's not woke or anything like that.
The socialist method of analyzing class conflict adapted to the conflict between nations.
Yeah, this is so stupid. This is some Jordan Peterson ass shit. I agree. They didn't have healthcare. They had eugenics. Exactly.
Looking at that intersectional wheel again, we can see how this oppressor-oppressed lens can be adapted to each of these dichotomies, and how the resulting thought process is identical to the politics of the various strands of woke activist. Straight or gay.
So are you saying that the Nazis are woke? Are you just doing that to try to, like, be like, wokies, you're Nazis? Very smart.
Cis or trans, whatever. A common one in geopolitics on the left right now is Jew versus Palestinian. It is the ethics...
Jew versus Palestinian? No. Fucking no. The state of Israel versus the Palestinian people. Like, fucking what, dude? Why is he bringing up Jews? Oh. Oh. That's why. He said Jew weird too? He fucking did, didn't he? Tell that to the Jewish Palestinians. Quiet part out loud. Fuck, man. He can't help it.
And processes of socialism applied to these dichotomic groups. Of course, in reality, this is actually an
Dude, I've had to pull this fucking thing apart today.
Extremely bigoted way of framing the relationship between these groups, despite woke people proclaiming themselves to be hyper-inclusive. There's an assumption built into the logic of the system that just as the proletariat and bourgeois inherently have opposing class interests, so must every other oppressor and oppressed group. But that doesn't actually really work. And as you think more about it, it sounds fucking insane.
Okay, dude. Yeah, so you just don't understand what this concept is at all. This is a fucking terrible video.
How is it that gay people and straight people, for example, as two different classes,
They're not two different classes. Gay people and straight people are not in two different classes. What are you talking about? That's so fucking dumb. This isn't even close to real.
have opposing class interests.
No.
Any sane person will tell you they don't. That's retarded. But remember...
Oh, fucking Jesus Christ, of course.
Remember, the extraction of surplus value from the proletariat to the bourgeois is a zero-sum game.
Being straight doesn't mean you're part of the bourgeois. You're so fucking stupid. Every time he gets to this point in a conversation, he's just brain dead. It stops working. Is he in a coma?
When one class wins, the other class must lose in this framework. What constitutes a zero-sum game when it comes to these other identities? Well, there's a couple ways that a zero-sum game could emerge. One way is replacism.
Fucking replacism? Dev, my dude.
Here's an example. Assume you have 10 seats open in a school course. The 10
Holy
best student
shit.
applicants are all straight white men. Then the school's diversity quota requires that 3 of those
The diversity quota.
seats be filled by black queer women or something.
Yeah.
You necessarily must replace 3 of those white men because the number of seats are finite. When there
Hear me out. Get 3 more chairs. Easy. The 10 best applicants are never all straight white men. Oh, don't tell him that. He will be fucked and he'll be pissed. Do not tell him that the top 10 people for a given position are all white men, okay? Except anyone who gets 100% of the test. Right. That's all that anyone's asking for. The thing that's happening is that there are still, we can prove it, sociological, we'll call them phenomenon. It's racism. Sociological phenomenon that continue to happen with people that have, like, for instance, black sounding names get hired at lower rates. Isn't that crazy? Why is that, man? They've literally done this. They also get access to worse healthcare and housing. Studies have been done on this too. Literally, a black family can go look at a house, and the real estate agent or whatever will, like, not sell it to them as hard, or will tell a wrong price, or just, like, won't give the offer in, and they'll wait for a white family to come through. This happens. This is real. We have proof. And it's not every one of them, but it's enough to where that has a real statistical, material negative effect on the black population. The effects of redlining, the effects of slavery, the effects of not having civil rights until my mom was 10 years old could lead to a lack of financial security generationally through black families, for instance, right? But you don't want to talk about that. You're like, well, they got rights now. Better not even fucking think about it. They were supposed to get reparations for being slaves for generations. Whole human beings were born and died in slavery, and their families went on and had nothing to their names and still face racism to this fucking day, and don't have and never got the opportunity that we had as white guys, right? Like, simply saying that Martin Luther King, we got Martin Luther King Day and we did civil rights. We did fucking kill him, but we're not racist anymore. Like, it just doesn't work that way. That's a naive take. To imply that this country is holistically good or anything is, like, so fucking stupid.
there's a fixed amount of space.
You keep saying reparations, but all I hear is replacement. That's right.
Diversity requires replacement and functions as a zero-sum game, which is something that I went into in my competency crisis video. Another way is representation. You see this one in media literacy conversations a lot, where intersectional activists want characters to be made representative of their preferred demographic.
Why is there a fixed number? No one knows. He's making a straw man.
Even at the expense of the art itself. It doesn't
Expense of the art. Oh my god. He's doing white replacement? Oh yeah. White replacement. Now it's representation. Expense of the art! They had a black stormtrooper ruined!
matter what the character was before, race swapping them to be black or claiming they're now queer, or alternatively introducing a new black queer woman character for the old beloved character to play second fiddle to. These are...
So Alan Wake 2 is like 100%, right? 89%, 9 out of 10, 92%. More like Alan Woke. True! Actually, that was just a suggestion by General Sherman. The U.S. government made no claim of reparations for slaves anyway. Slave owners got there after the war. No, I'm saying like ethically they should have. I agree that the government never... General Sherman was right. Burning Sherman, dude. What a psycho. Love him. That guy was ready to burn some motherfuckers.
Are acts that center the traditionally marginalized demographic, which has historically existed on the fringes. In this way, representation becomes its own zero-sum game. As
classic franchise, your favorite protagonist is back with new faces. Obi-Wan? So this didn't happen. This is pretty sexual. This didn't happen in the Obi-Wan game show. And also he won the future of the saga? What? If you don't like this, you're a racist and misogynist? They're so insecure. I agree. This didn't happen. This wasn't even close. The show was mid. It's whatever. Yeah, I mean, hot. I mean, if you want to be domed, go for it. Not a hinge in sight. Not even close.
There is a finite amount of space in the spotlight. Now that we know this is how the woke activist views these things, everything clicks into place.
Everything clicks into place. Do we know that this is how the woke activist sees things? Do you think you're straw manning? I would really like to talk to you about this video. This is a bad video, man.
We know
Obi-Wan show is trash, but Andor was really good. I recommend Andor.
Why they push diversity, but what I'm describing here is what they're thinking when they do it. If class conflict is an inevitable zero-sum game where they can only win or lose, and where the oppressed group has a moral license to do whatever they want to their oppressors.
That's also crazy. The oppressed group does not have moral license to do whatever they want. Not true. This has never been the claim of Marxism or fucking leftists in general. No one has this opinion. I gave the example earlier. Like, you can't just, sexually assault Elon Musk, for instance. That's an unethical act, even if he's a billionaire. You can eat him, though. Totally different.
Then it suddenly makes sense that every woke person screaming about the evils of inequality nonetheless hypocritically advocates for unequal treatment. Going all the way back to the beginning then, when I said wokeism is the ethics and processes of socialism
so stupid.
Extended beyond class struggle to include race struggle, gender struggle, sexual struggle, and any other near infinite number of marginalized groups, as defined by intersectionality.
So, intersectionality and socialism, I think, both live under what right-wingers like you call woke. But I don't think you need to be a socialist to be woke. Being woke has always just been understanding social systems. How do you cook a billionaire? Well, I have an excellent video for you guys. Did you guys know I have a cooking channel? Holy shit, you did, didn't you? I have a cooking channel. The best way to cook a billionaire is actually right here in the video titled "The Best Pulled Pork You've Ever Made." Subscribe immediately, obviously, but genuinely, I'm a great cook, and you can take that to the bank. This is dope as fuck. The best pulled pork you've ever made. We're not going to watch
pulled pork.
We are, and so anyway, here's what happens. Salt it and put stuff on it. And let it sit around in your fridge, okay? Let it sit around in your fridge. Hold on, that's getting ahead of the game. Let it sit in your fridge and get seasoned through. This is a big-ass hunk of meat. Salt it 1 or 2, 3 days ahead of time. Put your dry rub on 1, 2, 3 days ahead of time. Who cares? And then get it in there. What you want to do is, there's some brown sugar in here. What you want to do is low and slow. I did 250 actually, 250 degrees in the oven for I don't know, however fucking long it takes to get to 205 internal temp. Don't worry, we do some other stuff in there too. Make some delicious tacos and stuff. Or I guess this one is a sandwich. But look at this thing. Hold on, we're gonna pull it out. I'm gonna show you some of the good stuff.
It's slightly covered, not 100%.
You can hear it crackling
and come down a little bit. Retain some more.
Did we do the texture check?
now.
Do a texture check. Hold on, I want you to hear this.
What I want.
Okay, so you have a crust on the outside, and then what happens is, let's get to right here. About to cut into this baby. Look at this.
Contain some moisture,
Look at
and
this
then
thing.
we'll shred it. So I'm actually just gonna take a nap. We're not gonna shred the whole thing, but I can show you sort of what we're looking at here. You can just see, like, with a fork, it pulls.
Come on, dude.
And so you're gonna have like this.
That's how I would cook a billionaire, personally. You could cook a billionaire into short ribs too, probably, if you wanted.
I want these.
Braise your billionaire? Sure. I'll braise a billionaire. Was it juicy? Of course it was juicy, dude. You're hiding in my fridge right now? Well, I have a little of that pulled pork in my fridge still. And we only got a few days until it's going to go bad, so.
I hope you now
The
understand
world is an Instant Pot? It is, a little bit, if you think about it.
what I mean. It doesn't mean that there's a black or gay person in your video game or in your movie. At least not necessarily. It means that the socialist way of viewing the world, where everything stems from an inevitable class conflict, where the only
So why do we have different words for woke and socialist then? So woke is just socialism? Just you're a socialist? That's dumb. I bet there are socialists out there who are not woke or whatever, like sexist, right? I don't think you're woke if you're a sexist. There are sexist socialists. Did he even acknowledge where the word came from? No.
only possible outcome is fully winning or fully losing. No draws, no opt-outs, is adapted to the various identity dichotomies of intersectionality.
Yeah.
This is an extremely
So intersectionality, like understanding intersectionality is woke, not intersectionality in practice, right? Like intersectionality in general is just a thing that exists. Understanding it is what is like woke, right? Understanding socialism is what is woke. Is there a war? What is winning or losing? I have no fucking clue.
toxic way of thinking. Imagine believing that because you are black, the whites are your eternal enemy. Your differences can never be
That is not what people have. Like maybe a black Israelite, like a fucking extremist, maybe, but that is not, especially not the BLM protesters. It's crazy to say that. Insane. So many white people, woke people who are white, are in coalition and commune regularly with black people. Like it's not part of it. The class struggle is intersectional, man. This is what it's about. You're so silly. We're straw man.
And you are destined to engage in a race war that must eventually end with the annihilation of one side.
That's not reasonable. That's not at all.
That any peace is temporary and should be used as a pretext to prepare for the next war. There absolutely are black activists out there who think this way, and white activists as well from the other side. And these people ruin it for fucking everyone because the normies don't actually agree with them. It's also an extremely retarded way of thinking too.
Dev, come on, dude. They're always white. Come on.
Imagine believing that because you are trans, cis people are your eternal enemy.
Right, that would be stupid. Which is why no one fucking does it. You dumbass. Wouldn't it be dumb to make a straw man video? Why did you do that? This is a bad video. He's so fucking dumb. This is disappointing even for Dev. This guy's stupid, but his brain's fallen out of his fucking head and off a cliff. The first 10 minutes of this, no, not 10 minutes. I'm sorry. 6.5 minutes. The first 6.5 minutes of this, I was like, maybe he'll not be so stupid. And then he went to try to have opinions and just stopped being good. Not even good. Stopped being not as shitty as I thought it would be. He had exceeded my expectations for 6 minutes.
Differences can never be reconciled. You are destined to engage in a war with them, etc., etc. The unhinged and frankly unearned militancy and extremism of all of these various identitarian groups on the left. They're all different, but they all use the same playbook. It's because
they use the same playbook. They're all different, but they use the same playbook. So you'd expect leftists to just be in constant war with one another or something? Yeah, he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He took the class struggle of the proletariat and the bourgeoisie and just said, what if instead of the instead of the bourgeoisie, I put white people there, or straight people and gay people, or trans and cis people? Like, what? So dumb.
because it's this playbook. It's Marx's playbook. By the way, Marx wouldn't actually agree with any of this himself. This is a long-standing internal fight among the socialists, with more orthodox Marxists being branded as class reductionists by the intersectional socialists for, well, reducing everything to the class conflict. Contemporary Marxists.
Well, yeah, but usually class reductionists are like not, they're like, this is the kind of people we're talking about. They wouldn't be considered like wokey or whatever. Typically that person won't see intersectionality as a priority or anything. Yeah, like racist or whatever, yeah. They're racist or they're sexist or whatever. They still want to be cool. They still think that it's cool to be like, yeah, I'm not down with the transes. Trans people, not for me. It's pretty cool. No war, not war, but class war. It's usually no war, but class war. That's fine.
Believe that bigotry is a product of capitalism and will be automatically solved after capitalism is abolished.
Bigotry is exacerbated by capitalism. That's why they're class reductionists. So bigotry is exacerbated by it, for sure. Just due to the way, specifically the pernicious sort of effect of American chattel slavery and how that's persisted through, hundreds of years of our, from colonial U.S. to the actual formation of the Union. Like, this is why class reductionists are dummies, right? Because they don't understand that you can't, it's not both. Who we're listening to, this is ShortFatOtaku, who is dumb as shit.
Intersectional socialists believe that each intersectional identity must engage in its own class war, and that all of them must be won before socialism can be achieved.
No, they don't. Nope.
So, when a right-wing person says that wokeism is communism, or Marxism, or socialism, or whatever, though they probably don't exactly know what they're talking about, there is something there. They're not exactly the same thing, and most people who we'd call woke, aren't going to want what Marx himself wanted. But it's the same way of thinking, the same analytical lens, applied to all oppressor and oppressed dynamics. And when a left-wing person tells you that you're insane, this isn't happening, you're just peddling that bigoted cultural Marxist conspiracy theory again.
Wait, he already knows that he's doing cultural Marxism? What? Then yeah, this is a straw man of the position. None of us think this way. Why wouldn't you just ask? Why are you trying to assert this? What a dummy. Come talk to me, Dev. You didn't do very well last time. Let's do it again. I have to talk to you about this. This is so stupid. Am I blocked on Twitter still? Is this him? No, I thought he had a different one.
Either lies to deflect or ignorance of their own theories. This is what it is. This is where it came from. And if you push them on it, it won't take long for them to say, oh yeah, this is actually happening and it's good. Whoa.
No, man. Happy to come chat. Let's do it.
Woke means
this is wrong.
The ethics and processes of socialism applied to intersectional identitarian conflict.
Nope. Not true.
That is its definition. That is what we should mean when we say woke.
No,
that is what
it
we
isn't.
should present when asked, and that is what we should use when talking about these ideas.
I disagree. I think this is a terrible job, and you are going to get a lot of right-wingers owned in the comment sections of your videos and on Twitter. Awesome.